So as we learned once again, VA, DOD, they had the science the whole time. Our veterans are still struggling for the care that they need, but there's a way to stop this from happening again. So let's break it down into a more solutionary mode. And Kerry, you can speak to this. You've been dealing with this, on the advocacy side and from the VA side.
The biggest problem are probably the examinations, because most examiners don't know what these burn pits are. They might know, benzene causes leukemia. But what does polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, 24 of them, and dioxins and furans all together cause? If there's not a presumption of service connection, a lot of them are issuing negative medical opinions that get claims denied simply because there's no presumption. So, VA has not informed us that that this type of cancer is caused by service in the Gulf War.
Right.
That's kind of what you get. And then the adjudicators nowadays take that, and rather than questioning it, in which they should send it back as an inadequate exam, it never happens. They just rate the case on that and deny it.
So it's hard to see it, though, as miscommunication as much as callous indifference, because, a budget is a statement of priorities. Pentagon spent between 2011 and 2014 $294 million on erectile dysfunction medicine. The Burn Pit Center of Excellence for the VA, their budget for 2021, 11 years after the memo stating these are the toxic exposures are going to come down, $7.5 million. That's a lot of boners and not a lot for toxic exposure. So it feels more sinister than that.
I got involved when I was chairman because I had too many troops that were being wounded, medically retired, and moved to the VA, and I wanted to find out what happened over there. So what I found was, as is much the case today, the burden of proof is laid on the individual and the families, and in some cases it takes years to resolve.
In your mind, how in God's name does this happen?
There actually is no excuse for it. These are two institutions, the Pentagon and the VA, that are not well connected. It's got to be Secretary Austin and Secretary McDonough that come together on this.
So Secretary Austin is Secretary of Defense, and Secretary McDonough is the Secretary of the VA now, who just took over.
Those two individuals have to come together on this and break it apart, and then follow up in execution to make sure it changes. It's upside down. We should assume that they have it,
right?
Grant the benefits, and then audit those who are actually faking it, just like our tax system.
And to piggyback off what the Admiral said, is most of these people that have been diagnosed with lung disease or colon cancer, they're not going to come back from war and file a fraudulent claim.
One of the things that's happening is there's a real disconnect between the American public and the fact that there's a war going on at all. Most of us don't even feel it in, one of the ways you can feel it.
We were told to go
shopping.
shopping. When the Global War on Terror began, there was no victory garden, there was no sacrifice, there was no nothing.
There were tax
cuts. We were told that there would be tax cuts and we should all go shopping.
Right. In past wars, there were, the American public was asked to contribute. There were war bonds that low and middle income earners could pay into. Taxes went up in both world wars and the Korean War. They were entirely paid for through taxes. And today, it's been tax cuts and credit card war spending. We will owe $6.5 trillion in interest alone by 2050. So I think about what this is going to mean for my kids. I feel like we're just saddling.
Forget about your kids. What about my kids? All right. So here's the solution. I'm throwing out the big idea, and I want you guys to shoot it down. Wes, jump in on this too. The Pentagon budget is like $715 billion, $53 billion. About $300 billion of that goes to contractors, defense contractors.
Actually,
Raytheon, McDonnell Douglas, is it more than that?
It was $420 billion.
$420 billion.
2020.
The contractors that were contracted to get rid of the medical waste and all the waste from the soldiers, KBR, made $40 billion in just the first, 9, 10 years of the war, right? Why in God's name is there not a war profiteers tax? 2%, if you make money off of the war machine, How is it that you don't have to kick in for the consequences of the wars that you have profited on? Tell me if that is a feasible solution in your mind.
It has to be. I mean, there's a revolving door right now between these companies and Congress, and this is the famous military-industrial complex. This is the beast that we have to fight if we're going to solve any of these issues.
Why the hell is our war machine scot-free and the veterans are the ones that pay the price for this budget?
The unforeseen hand that moves all of this stuff is the defense industry. 55% of discretionary spending in this country is on the defense budget.
What would you say then to congressional leaders that are reluctant to in any way encroach on the power of these defense contractors and the military complex?
Put your child on the front line. Put him on the game. Put him on the street. Give him a uniform, give him a rifle, give him a pair of boots, a set of body armor, and send them into combat. That's the only way it's going to change, because their kids don't go to war.
I mean, that's a key issue, John, that we didn't have in Iraq when we went in 2003. We didn't have much of a debate about that in the country, and we went. And we have half of 1% of the American people's sons and daughters are in the military. The military is getting more and more disconnected from America writ large, despite all the praise and despite all the support from the American people. That's what we need in terms of the debate that has to occur before we go to war the next time. And that debate has to happen at the dinner table of every family that's got an 18-year-old son or daughter that could get drafted to go to war. And then if the answer is no, we don't, and if the answer is yes, we do, depending on the stakes. But the American people are in. The American people have not been in these wars.
We think of our service members as an egalitarian force, but it's not. I mean, the military recruits most heavily from racial minority communities, low-income communities. This is a story of marginalization and inequality.
And yet it's the best force we've ever had. It is the best force we've ever had.
I think we're looking at it the wrong way, Admiral. I truly, truly do. And I mean no disrespect. But instead of talking about the next war, as somebody who's actually taken human life, I don't know how many of you on this table have, Wes knows, he was an infantryman, I was an infantryman. I've stacked on doors. I remember my platoon leader, my squad leader, putting me in the front of the stack. And I said, Sergeant Garcia, I'm a brand new private. I don't know what I'm doing. He said, good, you're expendable. And we kicked the door and we went in. He was joking, but he wasn't joking. I don't ever want to see another war. There is no such thing as a just war. There are two rules in war. Young men will die, young women will die, and somebody has to walk the point. There is never a just war. There might be a war that happened, World War II, but anytime, we're talking about the cost of war in human dollars. $6 trillion is not worth one human life on either side. So let's not forget how Americans are suffering. Millions of Iraqis and people in Afghanistan and Africa, which we don't even talk about, are suffering from the same effects of the burn pits and stuff that we don't even get to.
This is an unbelievable point because it's, we're talking about it right now, but the real elephant in the room is those burn pits, the devastation that they leave in the countries where we use them. I mean, we turned Iraq and Afghanistan into Superfund sites. And I can't even imagine seeing the devastation that occurs on veterans in this country. I cannot imagine what the local populations must be experiencing during this time. Our inability to own the consequences of the war machine is probably what has to change. Short-term presumption for veterans, expertise at the VA, intentionality in terms of predictive treatments and diagnostic treatments, long-term skin in the game for more Americans, more skin in the game from the defense contractors that profit the most from this adventurism, and to your point, being better humans. Not sure we get to that one. Haven't yet, but I can't thank you all enough for being here and joining us and having the discussion. Admiral Mullen, I'm sorry, you were kind of on speaking of on point, you were kind of on the point here, as a representative of, kind of administration.
Sure.
But, I've known you for a long time, and I always appreciate your willingness to engage and to not think rigidly. So thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you guys very much for joining us.